Awesome. Hello and welcome to Horticulture Happy Hour. My name's Wade Hobbs. I'm an environmental horticulture agent with the University of Florida IFAS Extension Office in Clay County. And if you've seen any of the prior lives or prior videos from this series or been in any of our classes, you might know that this is an attempt by me to try to bring some of my personal interests in things like mixology and add them into my horticultural programming, where I talk about home gardening, residential gardening, as well as how to grow things you can eat out in your landscape or in your garden. And one of those things is fruit trees. Now, since this is only the third video in this series, we're going to be taking a look at one of the most common plants used in mixology, and just kind of one species. We're eventually going to talk a lot about citrus as we move through these different topics, because it is the basis of a lot of our classic mocktails, cocktails, because we really like acidity. But tonight we're going to be talking about limes. So limes are basically, I said they're a citrus. They're one that is extremely commonly used, and personally one of my favorite ingredients, because what it does, it gives you a nice light level of acid. So with limes, they actually have a really cool history. Basically, they originally, like all citrus, came from Asia, and they were brought around the world. Basically started getting planted around the Caribbean by sailors. And what happened was the British Navy is actually one of the main reasons that limes and other citrus have proliferated around the New World, because they started using them to flavor their daily rations of different things on the ships. So basically, limes are one of the earliest starts of what we now know as mixology and cocktail culture, as they started to first make mixed drinks. But they do have a great place in your garden. So citrus overall, if you have heard anything about Florida citrus, it is very iconic to be grown in Florida, but it's one of those things we are currently struggling with. And that is mainly because of a couple of factors, but the main one being citrus greening. This is a disease that was accidentally brought over. It's carried by an insect called a citrusillid that travels from tree to tree, usually feeding on younger growth. And when it does that, it can transmit a bacteria, and that bacteria enters the leaf, goes down to the trunk of the tree, and then reproduces inside of that trunk and cuts off the ability of that plant to actually to move nutrients, minerals, things up to its leaves. So eventually you'll start seeing discoloration of leaves, dieback, and eventually loss of quality in fruit. Oblong fruit is also a pretty common thing to see, and then eventually the tree will succumb and die. The sad part is right now we don't have any truly resistant varieties. We don't have a lot of great treatments for this disease. So usually it's kind of tell people to temper their expectation of their citrus. No, it's not. No, it's no longer going to be a 35 to 40 year tree. There are some things we can do, and I want to do a whole dedicated class on citrus screening later. But if you are worried about citrus screening, we can definitely help with identification. Some things we usually look for is this one's actually, I'm hoping, not greening resistant because or has greening because it's from our grounds. But you look for this kind of this asymmetrical discoloration and blotchiness on the leaves, and that discoloration is usually the first sign you see. But also with this, I also checked the back, and on this we did have some white flies, aphids, some good beneficial insects are showing up to help control those. There's actually a little bit of a there's some rust spores too, or so hopefully this is not greening, but I'm going to keep checking it. But so overall with citrus, with growing it, a couple of key things is always to buy plants that come from certified nurseries. So let me grab a tag real quick. So what you're going to look for on your trees, and this is not an endorsement of any individual nursery or store or anything, what you're going to look for your citrus is tags like this, where it says, a lot of times it'll say federal regulations prohibit the movement of this plant outside of Florida, which is actually we don't want citrus greening spreading too much into surrounding areas and surrounding states, even though they have found it now in Texas, California, most of the Gulf states. Anywhere citrus has had some greening sightings, but some states are still fighting it and trying to get it so it's not as widespread in Florida, because honestly, it's the reason why Florida is now producing less orange juice and citrus citrus than it did before World War II. But look for these tags. It's basically say when they're treated, that they've been grown in a certified nursery. Stay away from buying citrus from things like farmers markets, online posts, places where they might be growing their own citrus, because it's not going to be grown underneath of the proper conditions. They usually do need this treatment to stop the young trees from having issue, but also they do check their scions that they're grafting to make sure that they're not infected when they're not grafting on infected portions of plant onto new rootstock. So With citrus and limes especially, there are several ways to use these in mixology. The main way is usually that I use it is as juice, because citrus juice does a really good job of balancing things out. It has acid as well as some sweetness. The reason we use limes is because the acid in this is actually milder. It's mostly malic acid. So what that does when it hits your tongue, instead of being that sharp kind of super acid of like biting into a lemon, a lime is a little more subdued, but it lasts longer on the tongue. So if you're drinking something that has a lot of lime in it, you'll keep taste that lime after a lot of the other flavor. It'll hit you first, and that flavor will stay throughout the drink and kind of stay on your tongue because of the juice and the oils in the rind that's going to stay there throughout your experience drinking that beverage, even past when some of the other ingredients have kind of fallen off your taste, fallen off your palate. So, excuse me. So with this, what you want to do for main way with juice, what you do want to do is, I'll move the camera down so we can do a little bit of a demo here. So I'm just going to be showing how to properly juice a lime. Might seem really simple, but there's a couple of things that I have seen where people go wrong with this. So nice and safely, keep my thumbs away. I'm going to cut the lime kind of right down the center. Make sure you can see that. Make sure your knife's sharp too. Mine's not that great right now. You need to buy a new one. Then take your citrus, put it inside your juicer, and basically just squeeze down. Let's make a little bit of a mess. And normally I give it a little tip at the sides because sometimes things get knocked around. And if you come next week or the next video and see me do the actual mocktail creation with limes and Yaupon holly and mint like we've already covered, I'm going to show you off my other juicer, other big juicer I have too. So what you'll end up with is a nice spent lime shell. So in there you can see we got most of the juice out. But honestly, not a lot of juice out of this one lime. These were purchased a couple of days ago. When I go to the store, I usually look for limes that are near ripeness. They're actually, you don't want one that's super firm. You want something that basically feels a little bit softer. But what I've been finding is that normally a lime is supposed to have about 1 ounce of juice, which is good. But I've been having trouble finding limes that have 1 ounce of juice. So if a recipe calls for juice of 1 lime, usually you're looking at using something for 1. And that time I just flipped it over, try to get a little bit extra out. But what you really don't want to do with this is put the lime shell in and just squeeze everything out. Because that little bit I just put over here, because I might find a use for that lime juice, is on this, when I squeeze it out, when you really break down and bear down on the lime, you're actually going to start expressing the rind, and you're going to express all those oils and that zest into your drink and your juice, which will make it taste more bitter. So that's just a couple of tips there. Like I mentioned, you're usually looking to have about 1 ounce of juice per lime. This is definitely not 1 ounce, probably more like half an ounce, but it does happen. Now, with lime juice, I'm going to move this back up real quick. Okay, there we go. So with lime juice, big thing is you want to use it fresh. Lime juice will oxidize quickly, so if you use lime juice that's usually more than 12, 18 hours old, it's going to actually start tasting metallic to you. That's the oxidation. That's things breaking down the juice, so fresh lime juice is better. I usually personally tend to stay away from any processed or bottled lime juice just because they're usually not as high quality as what you'll get fresh juiced. So citrus is the one fruit that you definitely want to use fresh. But the good news in Florida is, like I said, you can grow it outside. You can be wary about your greening. But there are both citrus, a couple big tips for growing. Make sure it does get into a full sun spot. It has good drainage. And the one big thing is citrus are heavy feeders. Normally, out of our office, I always say that we tell people to not to fertilize less, fertilize less. We talk about lawns, landscapes. We tell them don't fertilize so much. Citrus are heavy feeders. So on the comments on this video, I'm going to add in information about how to get to our citrus, our greening resource, as well as our citrus fact sheets that do tell you how much to fertilize citrus by how old it is. And it's a great guide that will help you if you are struggling with your citrus plants a little bit. It can help you guide you along with that. And also, you ever see any issues, like if you think your tree might have greening, or you have an insect that's showing up that you don't know what it is, or your tree's just not producing the way you think it should, feel free to reach out to your local extension office. We're very happy to help. And last little tip before we go in is citrus can also be utilized as a great garnish, and I'm going to cover this more in our next video. So we'll be live again next Thursday at 6 p.m. again. We're actually making a mocktail utilizing the 3 ingredients we've covered so far in this class. But limes are also, if you ever On a drink, you can use them as lime wheels, like I actually did in the first video. You can use the spent rind. You can float it like an island, like upside down, so it makes a little island shape. You can flip it upside down. One of my favorite places I've been, they've actually will take lime shells and fill them up with little like boba popping pearls of passion fruit, so you get a little snack. So that's kind of fun. We're going to talk about the whole creation of mocktails next class, though, and a little bit on garnishes too. So hopefully you learned a little bit about citrus tonight. Reach out if you have more questions. Check your local UFI's extension office to see if they have any upcoming classes related to citrus if you're really interested. And thank you for joining us again tonight if you're live. If you're watching the video, thank you for finding us. I've been very happy with the views after the lives, especially over the past couple weeks. So we're going to keep building this and hopefully have it go further into the future and keep covering topics almost every Thursday, all the way through at least the end of this year and into the new year. So thank you for joining us again, and I hope you have a great day.